Hey everybody, welcome to the videos for my core plays for week 4 of the NFL season over on DraftKings. This is where I go my 3 favorite cash and tournament plays on the entire slate. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become a official member over on Patreon. Link is down below the description for that. You get access to a lot of extra content, including all my spreadsheets that are all color-coded nice and neat, all the data you'd ever need, so they're quite easy to follow. Projections, ownership projections, optimizers, Discord community, all that fun stuff. We got a couple hundred people over there. I'd be more than happy to have you. Link is down below. And we'll have 4 sports going on once NBA starts. There's going to be a lot of extra content over there, and I think you would find it helpful. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you. First, the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you're new signing over on PrizePicks, you can get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100, so it's free money. Why not use it to your advantage? When you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. But I think it'll be pretty much it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And starting us off with cash core play number 1, we have the King, Derrick Henry, $8,800. I will say Alvin Kamara is a very close second here, and if you can't quite afford Derrick Henry, you save a couple $100. I think Alvin Kamara is just fine their first home game. But in cash games every single week, what I am trying to get is volume, and no one's going to offer us more volume than Derrick Henry. We have a legit chance of getting 40 total touches from him out of this game. The big thing here is that there's no A.J. Brown or Julio Jones, so the offense is going to completely run through Derrick Henry. I know what you're probably thinking, though. Can defenses just more so focus on Henry instead of having to worry about the 2 wide receivers outside? Theoretically, yes, although the Jets are a pretty bad run defense and teams have been stacking the box against Derrick Henry in the past, and it really hasn't worked out too well. So I think Henry's going to be just fine here, and I will take the volume all day, especially in cash games. I know this saying is fade chalk Henry and play low owned Henry, but in cash games, I'm not really too worried about ownership or anything. And this is pretty much a smash spot here versus the Jets, especially with the 2 wide receivers being out. They are 6-point favorites on the road with a 25-point implied team total. And the Jets are allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to the running back position, well over rushing touchdown per game, and over 7 catches on 65 receiving yards. And I think we should mention that Derrick Henry has been getting used in the passing game this season, up to a 13% target share on the year. Last year, we're talking like 4 to 6% for his target share on the season. But we're averaging 4 targets per game so far. And one thing I want to mention, I think this is a smash over on PrizePicks this weekend. I found Derrick Henry for his over-under prop on PrizePicks at 8.5 receiving yards, and he has surpassed that by a good chunk each and every single game so far. As on the season, he's averaging 4 targets per game, 35 receiving yards, and he's gotten 31, 55, and 19 receiving yards respectively in each game. And without A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, I feel like that's a very easy over on PrizePicks, and I'd not be surprised if that jumps a lot by the time game time starts tomorrow. So I would try to take advantage of that Derrick Henry over on receiving yards, because I'd be very, very surprised if it doesn't end up working out. And even then, without the bump in the passing game that we saw this year, he'd still be an elite player. He's averaging close to 30 rushing attempts per game so far, well over 100 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown as well. So Derrick Henry, I know he's expensive. I know there's other options on this slate, but in cash games, I will take the volume in a good spot with a positive game script and other positive external factors each and every single day. Then moving on to cash core play number 2, we have DJ Moore of the Carolina Panthers, who is massively underpriced in my opinion, at $6,600. Yes, I know the individual matchup versus Diggs probably isn't that great, but the same exact thing can be said for Diggs, as he has to face off versus DJ Moore, who has been excellent so far this season. And the guy's an alpha dog. He's a beast. He's top 10 in target share this season. And with no CMC, everyone's going to get a bump in this offense, because CMC, he's the guy that can get 30 total touches each and every single week, with a large chunk of that being the passing game. So when you take him out the field, everybody in the offense is going to get boosts, especially the wide receiver one on this team, DJ Moore, who has a 31% target share on the season. This game should be quite high scoring. We're now up to a 52-point over-under, which is up from a 50.5 that we saw earlier in the week. And in addition to that 31% target share, we're talking a 40.1% market share of the team's air yards, 10.5 targets per game, nearly 100 receiving yards per game. And outside of the individual matchup versus Diggs, this is a pretty good matchup as a wide receiver versus Dallas, as they are bleeding points versus the position so far this year. 28th versus wide receivers, which is the 5th most points per game, nearly 50 DraftKings points, and over 200 receiving yards just to wide receivers per game through 3 weeks. So, like in all the Panthers wide receivers here, if you want a nice pivot option at super low ownership, Robbie Anderson is a pivot off of DJ Moore. Does look pretty good in tournaments. I was even tempted to put him in this video in the GPP section, but I just couldn't quite do it. If you're looking at a pivot off of what should be the highest owned wide receiver in the slate, at least that's what I'm projected, Robbie Anderson is not a bad option there, but DJ Moore at 6,600 bucks. I think that is just way too cheap, in my opinion. I think the high ownership is definitely deserved. And I do want to mention over on Prize Picks, his over-under is only at 76.5, which he's gone over in each and every single week so far this season, and he's averaging 95 receiving yards per game. Then moving on to our third and final cash game core play, we have David Montgomery, running back for the Chicago Bears, who's in a big bounce back spot here versus the Detroit Lions, and I should say bounce back spot for the entire team, not just David Montgomery. They got absolutely blitzed last week versus the Cleveland Browns. Myles Garrett, 4.5 sacks, 9 sacks total. We're not even sure who the quarterback's going to be for this game. Justin Fields does not have an injury designation, but Andy Dalton is still questionable. Matt Nagy said it's going to be a game-time decision, so who knows, but they're facing Detroit this weekend. They're 3-point favorites at home, which is Bobo for the home running back, which is David Montgomery. He should see close to 20 total touches in this game. He can be involved as a pass catcher, and Detroit, just one of the absolute worst defenses in football. They were nearly dead last versus the position last season versus running backs, and thus far this year, they're 26th DVA versus the run and 23rd versus running backs, allowing nearly 28 DraftKings points per game. If he could just fall into the end zone, have a decent yardage game, and hopefully catch a couple passes, it's going to be hard for him to be a bust at only 5,800 bucks. And if you're playing a guy like Derrick Henry as your RB1, you're going to need to find a cheaper RB2 to offset that. So these two do fit together quite nicely, and I feel like a lot of people are going to go this route, because I'm currently projecting the two highest running backs on the slate to be Derrick Henry and David Montgomery. And then moving on to GPP core play number 1, I swear I'm not being biased here with the Cleveland shirt, but it's Odell Beckham Jr., 5,800 bucks to return from injury since his first game action since like last year, week 7 versus Cincinnati Bengals when he tore his ACL, but he's back and he was busy in week 3. He's going to have to be because Jarvis Landry is still out, so he's the bona fide wide receiver 1 in this offense. We know how talented he is, and he looked pretty good last week if you guys were watching the game. I definitely think this game has potential to shoot out versus Minnesota at Minnesota in the turf in the dome. 51.5 point over under, only a 2-point spread, and the Browns have a team total close to 27 here. Odell draws a dream matchup versus this Minnesota secondary, so I definitely think this could be a big blow-up spot. His first big game in quite some time, but like I said, he was quite busy last week, and they were waiting for him to be fully healthy, and I would say he was. He had 9 targets, a 31% target share, a near 50% market share of the team's air yards that week, and an 81% weighted opportunity share, close to 80 yards, 5 catches, and an ADOT of 16.6. Plus, Baker has been excellent so far this season. He's been great with the deep ball, quite dynamic. He's been very accurate so far as well. And looking at the matchup, Minnesota's allowing the 4th most points per game to the position, over 50 DraftKings points per game, over 200 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns, specifically 2 wide receivers in their 24th DVA versus the pass. So I'm liking this game a lot in tournaments. Guys like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, you name it. All these guys are a viable option. But just a single one guy out here, I think Odell is the best play once you factor in the price point. Then moving on to GPP core play number 2, I also think he's cash game viable, but with a lot of people playing David Montgomery, I'm not sure they're going to want to double stack that game with running backs, but it's DeAndre Swift here, 6,200 bucks running back for the Detroit Lions, and I know Jamal Williams is definitely going to be involved. He played on nearly 50% of the snaps last week. DeAndre Swift just north of 50. But throughout the season, it's been around 50 to 75% for DeAndre Swift. But Campbell, the head coach, did say we're going to see a lot more of DeAndre Swift moving forward, which is music to our ears because DeAndre Swift is a super talented running back, just stuck on a bad team and sometimes a bad situation. But he's been super involved in the passing game so far this season. And if we're going to get more than his average of 11 rushing attempts per game on the ground mixed in with his handful of targets each and every single game, 6,200 bucks is way too cheap for this talented of a running back. I know the matchup versus the Bears isn't exactly a cakewalk. They're allowing 11th fewest points per game to the position, but over 100 rushing yards per game. And the best thing about Swift is, even if he can't get going on the ground, he's averaging nearly 8 targets per game this year with a near 20% target share and over 6 catches and 50 receiving yards per game. So the floor for him has been super high so far. And let's just hope this coach speak is correct and does see a lot more volume, because I definitely think he's the by far better back than Jamal Williams. I'm not saying Jamal Williams is a scrub or anything, but we got to get DeAndre Swift more involved, and I love this price tag a lot. He's actually a great pivot off of David Montgomery in tournaments because they're close to the same price tag, and Montgomery should have higher ownership. And then our third and final GPP core play, we had DeVonta Smith at 5,700 bucks to the Philadelphia Eagles in what should be a bit of a shootout of a game. We currently have a 54-point over-under, which is one of the highest in the entire slate, and the Eagles find themselves as 7-point home dogs. So I assume they're going to be throwing the ball quite a bit here. I like Jalen Hurts a lot this weekend, so if I like Jalen Hurts, I probably like some of his pass-catching options. So guys like Jalen Reagor, his tight ends, DeVonta Smith, are definitely going to be viable options here. And you can run it back to some Chiefs players like Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Travis Kelce, or whatever you may prefer, or even the running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But DeVonta Smith, I know he really disappointed last week versus Dallas. I'm hoping that keeps his ownership low, but this could be a definite big bounce back spot here versus this KC defense that has really really struggled so far through the first few weeks, as they are currently dead last, 32nd DVA versus the pass, allowing nearly 43 DraftKings points per game to wide receivers, that's 23rd. And with Devonta Smith owning a 43% market share of the team's air yards, at some point he's going to pop here. I know he had a good week 1, then 2 disappointing weeks in a row, but at $5,700, should be pretty low owned. I definitely don't think he's going to get double-digit ownership. Should be around 5, if that. Probably right around 5, which is what I'm projecting. But, I mean, if you're using Jalen Hurts, excellent option to pair up with. But even then, if you're just stacking up the Chiefs, you could use Devonta Smith as a run back option without Hurts, but you have Mahomes. Either way, I think he's in an excellent tournament spot. And I do want to mention I was very close to putting Brandon Ayuk in this spot just because we saw the snaps and route share go way up last week. He also got into the end zone, so I was very close on putting him in here. Although the last time with Brandon Ayuk in here, he had 0 catches, 0 yards, 0 targets. It was a mess. But with that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video. So I do hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. It's the beginning of the month, so it is the best time to do so. But we'll have 4 sports going on soon. NBA, NASCAR, NFL, and MLB, so lots to be excited about. And also in the comments down below, let me know who your core plays are, because we're not all going to think the same, so I'm curious to see what you guys are thinking. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks, just you versus the projections. And as of right now, if you're signing over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 and use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. That'll be it. I will stop rambling. I wish you guys the best of luck in week 4. I'll see you guys on Monday for the showdown video.